Hey, what's up everyone? In this video, I'm talking about the Sigma 16mm f1.4 for the Panasonic GH5. I think it's a great prime lens option, and honestly, I should have gotten it sooner. If you're new here, my name is Caleb and I've been doing freelance video production since 2012, but this channel is to help you make your own videos, whether you just started or you've been making them for a while, whether you use the GH5 or any other camera. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So for a while now, I've been hearing great things about the Sigma 16mm f1.4 for the Panasonic GH5 and how it's a great prime lens option, especially on the Micro Four Thirds system. So I went ahead and bought the lens to try it out, and honestly, I'm super happy with the lens, and really I should have gotten it a lot sooner. So in this video, I'm just gonna go over a few things that I like about the Sigma 16mm f1.4, but also a few things that I don't like about it. But the things I don't like about it, they're not deal breakers. All right, so the first thing I like about this Sigma 16mm is that it's a Micro Four Thirds mount, so you don't have to worry about any adapters. So for me, shooting on two Panasonic GH5s, I have one with a Metabone speed booster where I can adapt Canon EF lenses, but the other one I keep open so that I can have Micro Four Thirds lenses right on the body. So I like that this is a Micro Four Thirds mount, so I don't have to worry about any adapters when using this prime lens. Now I have my Metabone speed booster basically screwed into the cage of the GH5, so I know that's not gonna go anywhere, but sometimes with the adapters, the connection can just be a little loose, and sometimes that's a little nerve-wracking. So having an awesome prime lens mounted right to the GH5 with a Micro Four Thirds mount lets me know that it's going to be secure and it's not going to go anywhere. Another thing I really like about this Sigma 16mm f1.4 is that f1.4. That max aperture of f1.4 is going to let you get some pretty decent depth of field on the Panasonic GH5. So on the GH5, sometimes that's one of the things that you're craving is just that depth of field. So with a max aperture of f1.4, you're going to be able to get some pretty decent depth of field and separation on the Panasonic GH5. Now I know a lot of lenses are that f2.8, which is fantastic, but having an f1.4 on your GH5 is gonna help in those low light situations as well. We all know, and I've said this so many times on the channel, is that the GH5 just isn't the best in low light. If you have well lit situations, it's a fantastic camera, but it does not perform the best in low light. So anything that you can do to bring more light onto that sensor, like having a max aperture of f1.4, really will help in those situations. Another thing I like about that max aperture of f1.4 is that, let's say you're shooting interviews and you're using the Sigma 18-35 like I'm using on that camera right now. That max aperture of f1.4 is really gonna match up well with the Sigma 18-35, which is a 1.8, but with the Metabone speed booster, it gets you to a 1.3. So you're really gonna be able to match up the scene well with these two lenses. So another thing I really like about this lens is just the focal length. So that 16mm is gonna be equivalent to, well, like a 32mm, which I found on the GH5 is a really great focal length to shoot with. So the focal length isn't too wide where you're gonna have like warped angles, but it's wide enough to get a ton in the image. You can shoot landscapes with it, or you could do more like portrait interview style shots with it. I actually think the 16mm or the 18mm on the Sigma 18-35 is actually my favorite focal length for shooting interviews. So it's gonna give that 32 to 35mm look, which in all reality is a really flattering look when you have people on camera. Now, one of the things that I've had to get used to is it's a prime lens, and so you're not gonna have the zoom on it. So if you wanna get closer to something, you're actually gonna have to move your body closer. So I'm used to shooting on a zoom like the 18-35, and so I can zoom in and zoom out really easily. It doesn't change the aperture at all, so the aperture isn't adjusting. But with a prime lens, I actually have to move my body. It makes me sound really lazy, but I promise I'm not that lazy. But it kind of makes you rethink your shot a little bit and how you need to adjust or maneuver and to get the shot that you want. Another thing I've noticed with this Sigma 16mm f1.4 is that the image quality is fantastic. Now I know that I'm bringing the Sigma 18-35 up quite a bit in this video, but the image quality on that is just outstanding. And the 16mm is very, very close to that. So you're gonna get a nice sharp image with it if you're not using diffusion filters. So the image quality is gonna be nice and crispy. And from what I've seen, I'm getting really good colors from it too. And another thing I really like is that this is actually a weather sealed lens. So I have full confidence in a full weather sealed setup with the Panasonic GH5. And I've said several times on my channel that where I live, I like having a weather sealed system because it could be nice and sunny like this one day, but then snowing the next day. So if you need to be out shooting, you want to make sure that your system is weather sealed. And so having a weather sealed prime lens like the Sigma 16mm f1.4 gives me a lot of confidence knowing that I can go out any day, whatever the weather will be, and I can shoot with this lens and this camera body. All right, so here's a couple things that I don't necessarily like about this lens, but in all reality, they're not deal breakers compared to the things that I do like about this lens. So first of all, this lens is not going to be stabilized, but here's why it's not a deal breaker, is because you have really amazing IBIS in the Panasonic GH5. So your image is not gonna have that dual image stabilization, but it's still gonna be a pretty stable, natural looking movement image shooting with the GH5 with the IBIS on. Also with the focal length, I don't think those micro jitters are too bad in there anyway. I think it's a good focal length for not having image stabilization. So another thing that I don't necessarily love about it, but it's not a deal breaker, is that it is a focus by wire lens, which means it's kind of sensitive around the focus ring. A lot of times I have a little bit of trouble with the focus by wire just because it's almost so sensitive that I just shoot right past what I want to focus on. But in the big scheme of things, that's not a deal breaker for me personally. All right, so here's a few accessories that I would use with this lens. First of all, I would definitely get a variable ND filter to have on the lens. For days like this, you would definitely want some kind of ND filter, variable ND filter preferably. So then a couple other filters I would have for this lens would be the Black Pro Mist. So for this one, I've got the 1/4 Black Pro Mist, and then I've also got the 1/8. So the 1/8 I would probably use mostly for interviews, and the 4th I would use a lot more for like creative style shots or for B-roll. So having these type of filters on here really helps in just some of the creative process. So let me know down in the comments, do you already have the 16mm f1.4 from Sigma? I know that I am personally late to the game on this lens. Is it something that you've been using? What type of things do you use it for? Let me know down in the comments. But I'm excited to use this lens a lot more in the future, especially for interviews and, you know, certain style B-roll shoots. But really, that's all I have for this video. So it'd be awesome if you stuck around, maybe checked out one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.